Hello my lovelies, don't forget to like and subscribe.
We had been on the road for what seemed like days, but in reality it was about 3 hours. Dad was driving and Mom was next to him. She shot glances at me and smiled every now and then. I had still not gotten over the fact that here I was, sitting there, in the back seat, in my short denim skirt and the pretty floral top I had picked out a few hours ago. My pale long legs stretched out before me, I idly ran my hand over my calves. The feeling of the long stretch of smooth skin still made me tingle inside. I shifted my legs, stretching them out and running my eyes down them. I was starting to love my legs in a way I had never done before. The first hour of the journey, Mom had spent glancing back at me and chattering away as she did. First she wanted me to sit up straight like a lady and not slouch. Then she wanted me to keep my knees closed. "Keep your knees together, Mia, we don't want you flashing your panties at everyone now, do we?" I looked at her startled, and adjusted my legs, pressing my knees together, blushing. "Don't worry, sweetie, it's something that will become second nature to you. Wearing skirts and being careful about being discreet are things all girls need to learn." I nodded at her, grateful for her help but also feeling a little annoyed that I was made to feel like a child. Then she had gone on to give me a 20-minute schooling of how to behave when we got to the resort. Mom would be spending a lot of the holiday going with Dad to various work functions. I would be alone with myself. Alone at the hotel, at the beach, at the cafes. Alone to do whatever I wanted, with whoever I wanted. "There will be lots of young men at the beach," Mom said with a smile, almost reading my mind. "A young lady needs to have fun and enjoy herself, but she needs to be careful as well." I didn't know what she meant by being careful, but I think not letting them find out what was really between my legs was part of it. Lunch. Dad called out suddenly, making me lose my train of thought. He pulled off the main highway and into a cute little cafe on the side of the road and shut off the engine. I stood in the entrance to the restrooms, staring at the two chrome-plated signs neatly fixed to the two doors. One a stick man and one a stick woman. With a deep breath, I mustered the courage to walk toward the door marked women. I was dressed as a girl, I felt like a girl, and I was determined to use the female restroom, just like any other girl would. As I pushed open the door and entered the restroom, a rush of anxiety washed over me. I felt like all eyes were on me, even though the restroom was empty, except for one lady who was washing her hands at the sink. She glanced at me briefly, her eyes widening as she took in my appearance. Was I caught out? Surely I just looked like any other slightly skinny, slightly taller than usual, 18-year-old girl. Did I really stand out that much? Just then Mom followed me inside, sensing my discomfort. She placed a hand on my back and smiled. "You're doing great, sweetheart," she whispered, giving me a small nudge towards one of the stalls. I chose a stall and quickly went in, hoping to avoid any further attention. Inside I stopped for a moment, realizing where I was and what I was about to do and which gender I was about to do it as. I turned to face the stall door and lowered myself onto the seat. I reached under the skirt to pull down my panties and then adjusted the skirt itself. After a few moments I felt my bladder sigh with relief and heard the soft feminine release of liquid onto the inside of the bowl. I adjusted myself so the stream would make less sound. The lady outside the stall was making me anxious. I was overthinking this. I just wanted to pee, for God's sake. When I finally exited the stall, she and my mom were both there, facing the mirror. The lady turned back again and gave me another stare. I felt self-conscious and scared. What was wrong with me? Just then Mom came to my rescue. "Can I help you?" she said out loud in a voice that was both withering and sweetly polite. The lady looked startled, like she was caught out. She turned to me and then my mom, and then most unexpectedly, tears welled up in her eyes. "I'm sorry, your daughter is so tall," she said, her voice filled with sadness. "She reminds me so much of my own Katie. We lost her in a car accident last year." She sobbed. "Do you play basketball too?" She looked earnestly at me through her tear-streaked face. My mom moved over quickly, her arm going around the sobbing woman. "Oh sweetie, it's okay, you poor thing." I stared wide-eyed at the scene. All my life, going to the men's room, I had barely exchanged glances with anyone there. It just felt wrong. But here my mom was, hugging some strange woman, and comforting her like she was a close friend. I walked over and ran my palms soothingly over the woman's arm, and she smiled at me. My mom and her walked out the door, still chattering and sobbing and holding each other. I followed them, my ears still ringing with the words the lady had used. "Your daughter." The following morning I awoke at the resort, tired from yesterday's long drive but ready for what I knew would be a big day. I was ready for my first day as a girl on the beach. I wanted the sun and the eyes on my skin. I was ready for anything. My mom greeted me at the door to the bathroom, with a big smile on her face. "Ready for your first day as a bikini babe?" I laughed, embarrassed. "Mom!" I cried. She shook her finger at me and pulled me into the bathroom and shut the door. I assumed she had some secret girl business that she did not want Dad to hear. Wearing a bikini that's revealing can feel very confronting, but I want you to strut your stuff, like all the other girls and women. She glanced down pointedly at my lower body. I was wearing pale pink cotton briefs and a little sleeveless top. "Do you need to shave down there?" she asked. I shook my head, blushing. I had actually checked when I woke up just a few minutes earlier. She nodded and turned to a little bag that was on the counter, and pulled out what looked like surgical tape. They matched the color of my skin. "You can use this down there to hide things away." "Have you done that before?" I stared at my mom, both shocked at the directness of what she was asking, but also so happy that she was supporting me through this. I didn't know if I should hug her or turn and hide with embarrassment. Instead, I just mumbled, "I've tucked before." She turned away, giving me some privacy. "Okay, go ahead then, sweetie." I felt mortified. I stepped out of the briefs and went about the process. I had done this a few times before this, but never in the same room as my mom. I pushed my bits up inside myself, and taped the sensitive skin back with Mom's tape. I made a few final adjustments and then said softly, "I think I'm done." She turned and looked at my handiwork and then nodded after a moment. "Good girl. Now put this on and it should hold everything in place." She handed me a light brown thong. It matched the color of my skin perfectly. It was also 2 sizes too small for me. I stepped into it and tugged it up over the tape. It held everything more securely in place. Finally, my mom handed me one of the small red bikini bottoms I had packed for the trip. I took these 2 and stepped into them, making some final adjustments. I stared down at my lower half in disbelief. Everything was in place. The red bikini covering up everything snugly, and making me look completely female under all of it. I shifted my weight from one hip to the other, and took a few steps up and down the room while my mother watched. "How does it feel?" she asked. I kept moving around the room, watching my thighs slide over each other easily. After a moment, I sat down on the edge of the tub and crossed my legs, marveling at how smoothly and neatly they fit together without my male additions in the way. "It feels good and very comfy," I whispered, my voice shaking with emotion. How does it look though? She smiled and ran her fingers into my hair. It looks like you're a young woman in a bikini. I smiled back at her, my lips trembling with emotion. She stepped closer and gave me a hug. It's okay, honey, I understand. But let's get you dressed so you don't have to miss out on any more time as a girl. She turned and handed me the bikini top. I got you some bra inserts too. They are adhesive and waterproof, so should work well even if you go for a swim. Just be careful. I nodded and peeled off my t-shirt and slipped the bikini top on in its place. Mom stepped up to me and gently slipped the bra inserts into each cup one by one. I watched her adjust the straps on the bikini and the inserts until it looked like I had small breasts underneath. I still looked skinny, but I looked undeniably female. Walk around a little, honey, Mom said, stepping back. I walked slowly back and forth in the spacious hotel bathroom, my eyes fixed on the wide full-length mirror that filled one wall. My face was flushed and my movements were a little awkward, but I looked from all angles like a young woman about to step out for a day out at the beach. Try to walk with a little sway of your hips, Mom said encouragingly, showing me with a few steps of her own. Mom had much wider hips than I did, but even with the slight adjustment my walk felt softer and more fluid. She smiled and nodded. I think you're ready. The sun was high in the sky, and the sound of crashing waves and the smell of the salty air filled us as we approached the beach. I stood at the edge of the sandy pathway, the soft grains slipping between my toes. The salty breeze tugged at my long hair, playing with it, making it fly around my face. Excitement and nervousness welled up inside me in equal measure. Here I am, I thought, dressed in this red bikini, ready to embrace the world as the girl I had always known I was. At the last moment, however, a jolt of self-consciousness had filled me, and I had slipped on a lace sarong skirt to cover up my tummy and legs. I stared at the other girls my age, frolicking in the water, pulling the attention of all the boys nearby. My fingers hovered over the knot. My heart raced, and my mom noticed my apprehension. She placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder and whispered, "You've got this, darling. You look stunning, and you're just as much a part of this beautiful beach as anyone else." I nodded at her and pulled the sarong off my hips, standing there in just the little bikini top and bottom. The sun and the sea spray bathed my bare arms and limbs in its glow. I squeezed my mom's hand tightly and whispered, "Thanks, Mom," and stepped barefoot onto the sand, a big smile on my face.